Hurricane Milton has made landfall in Mexico. The Category 4 storm swept across the Yucatan Peninsula, causing heavy downpour and triggering widespread flooding. Many are demanding support for vulnerable people as houses, roads and boats have been submerged by the floodwaters. Some eyewitnesses recounted standing on the roof of a church until 2 in the morning as the floods washed everything. The Mexican Meteorology Service has warned that intense rains and winds ranging from 180 to 200 kilometers per hour would persist as officials maintain orange and yellow alerts. The impact of Hurricane Milton is being felt in South Cuba, where roads have become waterlogged. Local residents describe the situation as very difficult. Now, those in Mozambique province are gearing up by being on the lookout for updated weather reports. They're also securing their boats and belongings on higher grounds to reduce losses. The Cuban Meteorology Institute says strong swells will be arriving on the northern coast of the western part of the country as Milton barrels north. One meteorologist says Pinar del Rio and Havana City are expected to be affected starting today. Milton is forecast to remain an extremely dangerous hurricane after landfall in Florida tonight, causing catastrophic damage and power outages expected to last days. To the United States now, Milton is forecast to be deadly and catastrophic, and officials are urging people to take advantage of the opportunity to evacuate. U.S. President Joe Biden had warned on Tuesday that leaving was a matter of life and death. Millions are heeding the call, hence this long line of traffic to get out of areas in the hurricane's path. The Federal Emergency Management Agency says a storm, which had been downgraded to a Category 4, is going to be nothing like Florida has ever seen before. For those staying, FEMA says they should refer to their local authority for advice. Evacuation orders have been given in low-lying areas and other vulnerable communities in 6 counties around Tampa Bay that are home to nearly 4 million people. Let's head over now to the U.S. National Hurricane Center, where Director Michael Brennan has been speaking on the impending hurricane. According to him, there is a storm warning surge in effect in almost the entire west coast of Florida, from Flamingo up to Suwannee River. He says Milton will cause structural damage to buildings, some will wash away, and evacuation routes will be quickly cut off. He also says the wind field of Milton is going to double in size, and that's going to bring the risk of damaging hurricane force winds to much of the central and northeastern portions of the Florida Peninsula.
Re-intensified this afternoon and is now an extremely dangerous hurricane. We've had data from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft in here just in the last hour indicating that the maximum sustained winds are now back up to 165 miles per hour. The pressure down to 905 millibars as we've seen this storm intensify. Satellite presentations improving, the eyes clearing out. Milton is moving off to the east-northeast now at about 9 miles per hour, currently about 475 miles southwest of Tampa. We're still expecting Milton to be a powerful major hurricane as it approaches the coast of Florida, bringing widespread impacts from both wind and storm surge, because the wind field of Milton, which you can see down here, the tropical storm force winds, the hurricane force winds, are going to about double in size by the time the storm reaches the west coast of Florida as we go through the day tomorrow and into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night. There's a storm surge warning in effect for almost the entire west coast of Florida, from Flamingo up to Suwannee River. We're very concerned about this area from Bonita Beach up to Chassahowitzka, where we could see an excess of 5 feet of inundation above ground level. And in this purple area, basically from Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Tampa Bay, Sarasota, Manatee County, somewhere in this region is going to experience 10 to 15 feet of inundation above ground level. This is destructive, life-threatening storm surge, not a safe environment to stay in. So if you're in one of those storm surge evacuation zones along the west coast of Florida, please heed that evacuation advice. If you've been asked to leave by your local officials, get out as soon as you can. You do not want to be staying in these very dangerous environments. 10 to 15 feet. So that's well above the height of any person, up to above a 1 to even getting into the second story of a building. And it's not just the water. It's not going to be filling up like a bathtub. This is water that's going to violently be pushed onshore from the Gulf of Mexico with destructive wave action on top of it. And you're going to have structural damage to buildings. Some buildings will wash away. Evacuation routes will be quickly cut off. We've lost people to storm surge in previous hurricanes who are trying to get out at the last minute and they drown in their cars. So please do not stay in these environments, in this unsafe area. Get out now while you still can. Remember, you only have to drive usually tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, to get to a safe location outside a surge evacuation zone.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday added his voice to calls for evacuation as it was a matter of life and death. He was speaking in the White House. He says he has approved pre-landfall emergency declarations in Florida and calls on airlines to accommodate evacuations and not engage in price gouging. Earlier, the White House said President Biden had canceled his trip to Germany and Angola to monitor the situation.
As you know, I put out a statement this morning. I'm canceling my trip to Germany and to Africa. I'm going to try to work those out later, but I just don't think I can be out of the country at this time. Number one. And number two, we're going to stay focused on what's ahead of us right now. I've been briefed by the senior leaders of this administration and who are driving our preparedness for Hurricane Milton, which could be one of the worst storms in 100 years to hit Florida, and continued efforts on Hurricane Helene. I've directed this team to do everything it can to save lives and our communities, help our communities before, during, and after these extreme weather events, and that's being done. That's being done. I've spoken to all the political leaders in the region, some of them more than once, and I've told them anything they ask for they can get. We've given, and we've got an overwhelming response, positive response from everyone from the governors of Florida up to North Carolina. And mayors, leaders, local, have expressed their sincere gratitude for the work of FEMA and for the work of my entire administration. Now, I've also surged thousands of federal personnel on the ground across the southeast already and deliver every available resource as fast as possible. This could be the worst storm to hit Florida in over a century, and God willing it won't be, but that's what it's looking like right now. Immediately approved the pre-landfall emergency declarations in Florida. This is the second one in a week, the second time in a week, and there have been two before that, by the way. I sent FEMA Administrator Criswell down to Florida yesterday to work intensively with the state and local partners as we prepare to deploy more resources. She's going to continue that work between Florida and North Carolina in the coming days. I'm calling on the airlines and other companies to provide as much service as possible to accommodate evacuations and not to engage in price gouging, to just do it on the level. And last night I spoke again with the governor of Florida, DeSantis, and Tampa Mayor Castor, and I made it clear to them they should reach out, including to me directly, with everything else they may need as they see this storm hits.
U.S. President Joe Biden. We hear now from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who just wrapped up a press conference a while ago. He says extra personnel have been made available from the National Guard, Florida Highway Patrol, and Florida Fish and Wildlife. The state would activate 8,000 National Guard members and supplies near the area where the storm is expected to make landfall. He also says hundreds of search and rescue personnel are on hand to begin immediate operations as soon as Hurricane Milton passes. His brief is most likely the last before the hurricane makes landfall. Governor DeSantis says the state is now bracing and preparing for a major hit, but he remains confident it will get through it.
Expected to make landfall on the west coast of Florida sometime between Wednesday evening and early Thursday morning. The storm has moved a little bit slower than initially projected. We can't control how strong or weak this storm will be when it hits the state of Florida. We can't control the path of the storm. The only thing that we can control is the decisions that are made on an individual level to be able to protect yourself or your family. We hope to have as minimal damage as possible, but looking at how big this storm is, there's going to be significant damage in different parts of Florida. And it's not just going to be with the surge. That will be probably the worst, but this storm is going to go through the peninsula as a hurricane. And you're going to have hurricane force winds on the east coast of Florida. So make the decisions now and execute your plan to be able to protect yourself and your family. No matter what property damage is done, we can rebuild homes, we can rebuild businesses, we can get people back on their feet, but only if they're safe and they survive the storm. We're not going to be able to bring people back who stay behind in 10 or 15 feet of storm surge. So you have time today. Time is running out, but you do have time today to make the decision to heed any evacuation orders and to do what you need to do to protect yourself and your family.
Hurricane Milton is said to have storm surges that could flatten an entire community. A storm has even caused Disney World resorts to close today and most likely tomorrow. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird spoke with White House FEMA spokesperson about the safety measures in place for this impending storm.
Mr. Hart, we thank you so much. We know this is a very trying time in the United States, and Florida is being hit for a second time with Hurricane Milton. Tell us what's anticipated. What are some of the safety measures being put in place to ensure the safety and security of those in the path of the storm?
Thank you for your time today. Well, right now, we want people to be extremely vigilant, listen to their local officials, and if told to evacuate as quickly and as safely as possible. Right now, it's all about working to make sure that families are prepared. What does that look like? If you have to evacuate, have an evacuation plan. Know where you're going to go. Talk about with your family members how you're going to communicate in case you do get separated. If you're not going to evacuate and remain in place, have an emergency kit. What does that entail? Food, water, maybe your important documents, and also any medications, and don't forget any items that you need for pets. But right now, it's time to prepare, listen to local officials, download weather alerts from the weather outlets, NOAA, the National Weather Service, download the FEMA app to receive weather alerts as well.
Now, it's been stated that this is even stronger than the last storm, Storm Helene. And so we know that people are obviously preparing in different ways this time, but we also know that there's furniture, there's items that have are the aftermath of the last storm. What's being done to secure those items so that we don't have further devastation beyond what this storm could cause?
That is true. There is debris that is still being cleaned up right now from Hurricane Helene. So this storm is going to bring complications as far as the damage that all the weather experts are predicting. Right now, it's just a matter of being as prepared as possible, listening to weather alerts, determining your level of risk where your home is right now. And if you are in an evacuation zone, the time to evacuate is right now. If you are not in an evacuation zone, you need to prepare that emergency kit as quickly as possible.
Now, we know the governor of Florida was stated, that he was not taking calls from the vice president. We also know there have been information provided by the previous president, Trump. Tell us some of what the Biden administration is trying to ensure that people do understand about the current state and what to do even after this storm hits.
Right. With leadership, there's always going to be discussions like that. But our main focus right now, again, is making sure that people are ready for this storm. We just have gone through and are still recovering from Hurricane Helene. This storm is predicted to bring severe damage to the state of Florida again. So right now, it's all about making sure that people are going to be safe in a safe place to ride out this storm. So when it does pass, that will be a time for us to do all of our assessments and figure out what it's going to take to help this community continue to recover.
Now, before we go, we know there are individuals that have been displaced from Storm Helene. How are you all preparing those individuals and potentially people that don't have a place to go, don't have an evacuation plan, and don't have many options? Is there shelters in place? What is the state doing and the federal government doing to ensure those individuals have options as well?
Yes, we work very closely with our state partners in making assessments on whether there are going to be shelters available. They need to contact the state and local emergency managers for locations where shelters are. They can also download the FEMA app to and type in their zip code to find shelters in their area as well. Right now, there still is time to find a safe place to ride the storm out, or again, if you are in an evacuation zone, the time is right now to evacuate as quickly and as safely as possible.
And I know I said lastly before we go, but I have to ask about the hospitals. How are hospitals being provided resources in case they do? Obviously, electricity, other resources are not available. Are people being transported to hospitals and other areas that aren't in the hurricane zone?
Right. We're taking every precaution right now. We have resources that are already in place, standing by, search and rescue teams. We have hospital and emergency teams already standing by. We have resources that are also in place as well in preparation for this storm that is barreling down on the state right now.
Well, we thank you so much. We thank FEMA for all of their work on this effort, and we do thank you for your time today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Our correspondent Maria Bird with a FEMA official. And for those residents in Orlando, Florida, residents have been racing to stock up on supplies before the storm hits. There's a huge concern about power outages, not really the floods.
It's going to impact a little harder with the mileage that's at where it's at right now, like 145 right now. So I'm hoping that it'd be less than that when it hits landfall.
Down South Tampa way, it looks like it's going to be bad, but here, you know, we're going to get some wind and rain, lose some branches, a couple trees topple, but not the end of the world like people are acting.
I feel a little safe, you know, but I'm scared because you never know how it's going to give it to us, all right? And I prepare already with my family.
We should have more supplies, but we should also be safe about it too. You know, be precautious with it, but a lot of people are not. So to me, it's just another weather.
There is thought for some of the animals in Florida. An aquarium has relocated 9 African penguins from their home on the first floor to a higher, safer floor. Several other animals, including a smack of moon jellies, 6 snakes, 3 lizards, 3 turtles, 2 alligators, 2 toads, and a hermit crab were also moved to safeguard precaution as the aquarium prepares for any tidal surge that may affect the building.
We have 9 African penguins, and they are on our first floor in their home. But we do have temporary home built for them, and they've moved up to the second floor, well above any type of tidal surge that might affect the building. And then we have several animals around the building that are on the ground floor that have all moved to second floor locations and safe locations that we plan for things like this. So they have nice homes, even though they may be a little temporary.
Let's keep in mind, Florida is still reeling from the impact of Storm Helene that hit nearly 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of debris still to be cleared, resulting in personnel from the U.S. Army arriving in one of those hard-to-reach areas, Marshall in North Carolina. Relief efforts continue across much of the U.S. Southeast after Helene, a Category 4 hurricane, made landfall in Florida on September 26. The storm killed over 200 people and caused billions of dollars in damage across 6 states. Communities in western North Carolina, hundreds of miles inland, were also among the hardest hit.
On you. 1, 2, 3.
Still ahead on the world today. The 2024 Nobel Prize is still being awarded. This time we have winners in chemistry. Stay with us. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has dissolved the lower house of parliament ahead of a general election slated for October 27th, the first national vote for the country's new leader. The poll, which will come a year early and ahead of the U.S. presidential election in November, will decide which party controls parliament's lower house. Ishiba became prime minister earlier this month after his predecessor, Fumio Kishida, decided to end his three-year premiership due to public distrust of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party politicians' funding scandals. After taking office, Ishiba pledged to compile a fresh economic package to cushion the blow to households from rising living costs as the new government makes an exit from deflation in its top priority. Mozambique has gone to the polls in a tension-filled exercise which many experts will deliver victory for the ruling Frelimo party, which has been in power since independence in 1975. Daniel Chapo, Frelimo party favorite to take over from outgoing President Filipe Nyusi, was among the first to cast his vote in his hometown of Inhambane, as polling stations open today. Now, after casting his ballot, Chapo addressed the media, expressing gratitude to Mozambicans. Leader of the main opposition party and former rebel commander, Osufo Mumade, also cast his vote in an attempt to break Frelimo's 49-year hold on power. This election takes place against a backdrop of economic challenges among Mozambique's 35 million people, half of whom are registered to vote. Also, a major concern is insecurity, perpetrated particularly by an Islamist insurgency in the north that has forced thousands to flee their homes and halted multi-billion-dollar gas projects. While Frelimo remains the favored one to win, Mumade's Renamo party hopes to make significant gains. Official results are expected within 2 weeks. The UNICEF representative in Sudan, Sheldon Yett, is making the case for children who he feels are victims of conflict. Yet spoke about the effects of armed violence on children as schools and health centers are being hit. He also discussed the steps UNICEF has taken to stop infectious diseases from spreading and the impediments humanitarians face in reaching those in need.
The fighting in Darfur is ferocious, intense, and affecting children in every corner of the Darfurs, and in fact, every corner of the country. Since April or so, we've had some 150 children at least killed. There are many injured. Kids, of course, kids didn't start this war. They are not the ones who are really fighting this war. They're not responsible for this war, but they are the victims.
TikTok faces new lawsuits filed by 13 U.S. states and the District of Columbia on Tuesday, accusing the popular social media platform of harming and failing to protect young people. The lawsuits filed separately in New York, California, the District of Columbia, and 11 other states expand Chinese-owned TikTok's legal fight with U.S. regulators and seek new financial penalties against the company. The states accuse TikTok of using intentionally addictive software designed to keep children watching as long and often as possible and misrepresenting its content moderation effectiveness. The states say TikTok seeks to maximize the amount of time users spend on the app in order to target them with ads. TikTok said on Tuesday it strongly disagreed with the claims, many of which that they believe are inaccurate and misleading. It was disappointed the states chose to sue rather than work with TikTok on constructive solutions to industry-wide challenges.
Because we wanted to protect children. It's as simple as that. Because nationwide, children and teens are struggling with significantly high rates of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, and other mental health issues, largely because of social media.
The North Korean army says it will completely cut off roads and railways connected to South Korea starting today and fortify the areas on its side of the border. That announcement, released via state media KCNA today, heralds a further escalation in activity close to the demarcation line separating the two Koreas, which had been rare in recent years until this year. South Korea's military said in July North Korea had already been installing landmines and barriers and creating wasteland along the heavily militarized border for months this year. The General Staff of the Korean People's Army said in a statement carried by KCNA that this was a response to war exercises that have been held in South Korea, which it called the primary hostile state and invariable principal enemy, as well as frequent visits by U.S. strategic nuclear assets in the region. As we end the program, 3 scientists have been awarded winner of the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. David Baker, Demis Hassabis, and John Jumper are being recognized for their work on understanding the structure of proteins. According to the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, which makes the award, half of the prize was awarded to Baker for computational protein design, while the other half was shared by Hassabis and Jumper for protein structure prediction. Hassabis and Jumper utilized artificial intelligence to predict the structure of almost all known proteins, while Baker learned how to master life's building blocks and create entirely new proteins. The prize, widely regarded as among the most prestigious in the world, in the scientific world that is worth 11 million Swedish crowns, which is about $1.1 million.
The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry with one half to David Baker, University of Washington, USA, for computational protein design, and the other half jointly to Demis Hassabis and John Jumper, Google DeepMind, United Kingdom, for protein structure prediction.
And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.